Graham had been married to Noelle for 3 years. And for nearly just as long, a man named Luca had been obsessed with her. Luca wasn't wealthy. He wasn't good-looking either. But what he lacked in charm, he made up for in delusion. He did everything imaginable to break up their marriage. He stole her worn clothes and hoarded them like relics. He showed up in a tuxedo to their wedding, uninvited, and tried to stop the ceremony. He once knelt in the middle of the street during a storm, soaked to the bone, for 3 days and nights, just hoping she'd come see him. His antics had become legendary across Brookhaven City. There was even an online betting pool, how long until Noelle gives in. But Graham never saw him as a threat. After all, Graham had it all: money, looks, a body sculpted by years of discipline. He and Noelle had known each other for more than a decade. They'd weathered their hardest years side by side. And most importantly, Graham knew Noelle. He knew her boundaries. Her scars. Her father, Scott, had died of heartbreak after her mother, Flora, cheated with a younger man and never came back. That betrayal had burned itself into Noelle's bones. She loathed people who crossed lines. Loathed them. So when their wedding anniversary arrived, Graham decided to surprise her. He showed up at her office, a gift bag in hand, a smile tugging at his lips. He didn't expect to find another man already inside. Naked. Luca was lounging in Noelle's chair, legs spread, a translucent scarf lazily draped across his lap. His head was tilted back, eyes half closed, mouth parted in a moan. "Noelle," he gasped, voice thick with desire, "God, you feel so good." Graham froze. His heart didn't pound, it stopped. He stood there in stunned silence, gripping the doorframe, when a voice behind him cut through the air. "Why are you standing out here?" a woman asked casually. "I just got out of a meeting." "Noelle." She walked up beside him and slipped her arm through his. Then she looked into the office. The moment her eyes landed on Luca, her body went rigid. Her pupils dilated. Her voice dropped an octave, sharp and furious. "Luca. What the hell are you doing?" But Luca didn't flinch. Being caught didn't shame him, it excited him. His hands roamed lower, his breath grew louder. The commotion drew the attention of security. The bodyguards outside, confused and unsure of what was happening, instinctively moved to storm the office. But before the bodyguards could push the door open, Noelle moved first. She slammed the door shut, cutting off everyone's view from the hallway. The sound echoed like a gunshot in the corridor. Inside, the air hung heavy. Her eyes swept the room, then finally settled on Graham. She hesitated, seconds dragging like hours, before speaking in a low, almost reluctant voice. "Can you go in and help him get dressed? There are too many people outside. No need to humiliate him further." Graham blinked. The request hit him like a slap. She wanted to spare Luca's dignity. This wasn't the first time Luca had pulled a stunt like this. A year ago, while Noelle was on a business trip in Canada, he'd broken into her hotel room and crawled naked into her bed. She'd woken up, screamed, and didn't hesitate for a second before calling hotel security. She didn't care that he had nothing on, she had him thrown out, bare and shivering, into the hallway. The incident made headlines for days. But somewhere along the way, her stance toward him had shifted. Graham hadn't noticed it until now. His thoughts fractured as the office door opened again. Luca had gotten dressed. But his eyes, those burning, unblinking eyes, were still on Noelle. He looked like a man in church, worshipping at an altar. "I love you," he said, voice low and reverent. "That scarf, it was a gift from me. Let it stay with you. Let it take my place, day and night." And just like that, Graham saw it all again. Luca's body slouched in her chair, the scarf draped over his lap, his moans echoing in that room. Bile rose in Graham's throat. He clutched his stomach, staggered to the bathroom, and vomited until he could hardly breathe. 5 minutes later, pale and shaking, he returned to the office. He was about to speak, about to ask what the hell was going on. But what he saw next turned his blood to ice. Noelle bent down. She picked up the scarf. And gently, deliberately, folded it. Then she slid it into her coat pocket, as if it were something precious. Graham froze. He couldn't move. He couldn't breathe. Because he knew her. The real Noelle. The Noelle who used to toss Luca's gift straight into the trash. The Noelle who once recoiled from any clothing he'd so much as brushed with his fingers, burning them in a fire pit without a second thought. And now? Now she was pocketing the very scarf he'd used on himself. She turned slightly, about to look over her shoulder. Graham didn't wait. Didn't think. He spun around and bolted. Down the hallway. Down the stairs. Into the street. He hailed the first cab he saw and gave the driver his address. The moment the door slammed shut behind him, the dam inside cracked. Everything he thought he knew, everything they'd built, was collapsing. And he didn't know where it would stop. When Graham got home, he walked straight into the study. Without turning on the lights, he went to the safe, spun the dial, and pulled out a document he hadn't touched in 3 years. A divorce agreement. His fingertips traced the ink of Noelle's signature. And with that single touch, memory flooded back. Noelle had once been shattered by her mother's betrayal. Flora, her childhood idol, her role model, had kept a younger lover in secret. Not only had she cheated, she'd protected that man even as he tormented Scott, Noelle's father, until the stress quite literally killed him. Noelle had unraveled after that. Brookhaven's golden girl became a ghost of herself, drinking alone, days blurring into nights, a wreck behind closed doors. And it was Graham who pulled her out. He stayed when everyone else left. He held her up, piece by piece, until she could walk again. Until she had the strength to claim Sinclair Ventures as her own. She never forgot that. On the day they married, she was the one who wrote the prenup. She handed it to him with a pen and a kiss. "If I ever betray you," she had said, eyes steady, voice firm, "sign this. Take everything. Don't give me the chance to hurt you." She had hated her mother for cheating. Loathed her for destroying their family. But in the end, she'd followed the very same path. Graham remembered the look in Scott's eyes during his final days, a once kind man reduced to a twitching, paranoid shell, consumed by his wife's disloyalty. He would not let himself end up like that. With a calm hand, he signed the divorce agreement. Then he picked up his phone. From the blocked contacts list, he unburied a name. Typed a message. "I'll sell you the shares. But the price has doubled. I want $200 million. The reply came instantly. Not in text, but as a voice call. A woman's voice slid through the speaker, smooth as satin and sharp as glass. "So you've finally come to your senses? I thought your marriage was unbreakable. Guess not. You know, now that she's out of the picture, maybe you should marry me instead." Graham didn't even blink. "I'm giving you 2 weeks," he said flatly. "After that, the offer's gone." And without waiting for a reply, he hung up. Graham knew Noelle. And he knew one thing for certain, she'd never let go of this marriage easily. Not out of love. Out of pride. So, if he wanted to leave cleanly, he'd need leverage. He'd need someone who could corner her from the outside. And who better than Avery, Noelle's longtime nemesis? The sound of heels clicking across the hardwood floor pulled him out of his thoughts. "You came home and didn't call me?" Noelle stepped into the living room, concern etched across her features. "The front desk said you looked pale when you left. Are you feeling okay?" She studied his expression. Seeing no visible distress, she finally relaxed. A smile curved her lips as she held up a small gift box like a child unveiling a treasure. "Anniversary present," she said, eyes bright. "See if you like it." Graham's gaze dropped to the box, and froze. Inside was a pair of silver cufflinks. Not just any pair. 3 weeks ago, he'd been in Switzerland with some friends, and at an auction, he'd laid eyes on those exact cufflinks. They were elegant, vintage, rare. But the final bid had flown beyond his limit, and he'd walked away with regret. Yet here they were, resting in Noelle's hands. "I told you on our wedding day," she said quietly, "that I'd love you and protect you for life. If there's something you want, I'll do everything in my power to make it yours." Her voice was solemn. Sincere. Her eyes locked onto his. But Graham's response was a hollow smile, just a tug at the corners of his mouth. Because the one thing he wanted most, faithfulness, was the one thing she could never give. He reached behind him and brought out a box of his own. Inside, the signed divorce agreement. "I got you something, too," he said, handing it to her. "But you'll have to wait 7 days before opening it." A flicker of confusion crossed Noelle's face. Still, she nodded. "All right. I booked your favorite place for dinner," she added quickly. "Afterward, we can walk around for a bit. Just the two of us." Before he could decline, she had already taken his hand and led him to the car. The ride was filled with her chatter, silly stories, light gossip, little attempts to make him smile. But Graham remained silent. Stone-faced. Distant. 10 minutes in, Noelle's phone rang. The name flashing on the screen made Graham's body stiffen almost imperceptibly. Luca. Didn't she block his number? Graham thought she had. Before he could speak, she answered the call with a frustrated sigh. "What the hell do you want now?" she snapped. "I told you to stop calling me. Don't you understand what no means?" From the other end came Luca's panicked voice. "My dad's in deep with a gambling ring. They're coming after me now, they said they'll break my legs if I don't pay up." Noelle blinked. But her voice stayed cold. Unmoved. "Then call the cops," she said. "Telling me won't help." And just like that, she hung up. The silence that followed was broken only by the grating ring of her phone as Luca called again. And again. And again. Each time louder. Each time more desperate. Inside the car, the air tightened like a noose. Graham finally broke his silence, voice sharp and low. "I'm not in the mood for dinner. Why don't you go find Luca instead?" Noelle cut him off before he could finish. "Forget him. His father's a degenerate gambler. If they're coming after him, he probably deserves it." But her words didn't match her face. Her brows were furrowed tight. And her grip on the steering wheel was white-knuckled. The car sped faster. Faster. Graham opened his mouth to warn her they were over the limit. But before he could speak, a black sedan shot out from the left. His eyes widened. A blinding crash split the air. Metal screamed. Glass shattered. And then, nothing but chaos. The world flipped sideways, and time dissolved into a haze of pain and smoke. He didn't know how long it lasted. Seconds? Hours? Then. Rough hands dragged him out of the wreckage. Noelle's voice cracked through the fog, panicked and shaking. "Graham. Can you hear me? Are you okay? Where does it hurt?" His chest throbbed with agony. It was hard to breathe, every breath felt like glass. So, painful. He managed a whisper, but she barely heard him over the shrill ringtone of her phone. "Luca again." Noelle answered it on instinct. This time, Luca's voice was no longer just anxious, it was terrified. "They're breaking down the door. There was screaming in the background. A crash. And then the line went dead. Noelle's expression changed in an instant. She knelt beside Graham, her voice suddenly businesslike, too calm, too fast. I checked. You don't have any visible injuries. The ambulance is on its way. Just wait here for a bit, okay? I'll come right back as soon as I take care of something. Before he could respond, before he could even move, she gently laid him down on the side of the road and stood up. And then she ran. Got into a waiting cab. Disappeared without looking back. Graham tried to call out. But the pain was too much. The sky spun. His vision dimmed. And then, blackness. When Graham opened his eyes again, 2 days had passed. He blinked at the sterile ceiling. Tried to sit up. But a firm hand on his chest stopped him. Don't move, the nurse warned gently. You've got multiple fractured ribs. One of them nearly punctured an organ. You're lucky. But you need to rest. Properly. She adjusted the 4-line, then walked to the door. Your wife's been waiting outside. I'll send her in. Noelle stepped into the room. Her eyes were bloodshot. Her face drawn tight with worry. She looked like someone who hadn't slept in days. Oh, God, does it still hurt? She whispered, rushing to his side. I'm so sorry, Graham. This is all my fault. When the doctor said it was critical, I thought I was going to lose you. If anything had happened, I wouldn't have been able to go on. Her voice cracked. She reached for his hand. But Graham pulled back, his throat raw. How's Luca? The question sliced through the air like a blade. Noelle froze. Just for a moment. But it was enough. He's fine, she said, too quickly. That whole thing about the door, turns out it was a lie. I just didn't want to risk anything happening to him alone, that's all. But I swear, Graham, I'm done. I won't talk to him again. I promise. Graham didn't answer. His gaze had fallen to the side of her neck, where a faint bruise bloomed. A bite. A mark. He felt the world constrict. Every breath a fresh wound. He slowly pulled his hand away from hers. I'm tired, he said hoarsely. Noelle didn't argue. She just nodded and sat down beside him. From that day on, she never left his side. She watched over him like a shadow. Sat by his bed while he slept. Wouldn't close her eyes at night, terrified he'd shift in his sleep and worsen the injury. By the end of the week, she'd lost weight. Her cheeks were hollow. Her eyes sunken. She looked worse than the patient. But Graham felt nothing. Not anger. Not sympathy. Just silence. Just distance. Until the 6th day. He was napping when the screaming started. Outside the room, chaos erupted. A crowd had gathered. Nurses shouted for security. And then, Luca. He stood at the center of it all, trembling, blood dripping from his wrist in bright red ribbons. In his other hand, he clutched a knife. You're finally seeing me, he shouted, his voice shrill, broken. 3 days, Noelle. I called, I texted, I begged. What did I do to deserve this? Why are you punishing me like this? The blood pooled at his feet. Gasps rippled through the hall. And inside the room, Graham lay still. The world once again collapsing around him. Noelle's face was pale with fury. I've told you already, she said through clenched teeth. I don't love you. I never will. Stop chasing me. She turned to leave. But Luca's voice exploded behind her, raw and desperate. Noelle. You're not walking away. If you do, I'll die right here. Before anyone could react, he slashed downward. The blade tore through skin with a sickening sound. Blood gushed instantly, painting his side red. Gasps echoed through the hallway. Chaos erupted. Noelle spun around, horror-stricken. She rushed to him and pressed both hands against the gaping wound. "Luca! Are you insane? You'll bleed out." He was ghost-white. Face drained of all color. But his eyes, those crazed, haunted eyes, never left her face. "If bleeding out is what it takes to be with you," he whispered, "then so be it." Noelle stared at him, disbelief and something else flickering behind her eyes. "You've really lost your mind." Without another word, she wrapped her arms under his shoulders and dragged him toward the oar, blood smearing across the floor as she ran. Graham sat in silence, watching her disappear down the corridor. She didn't return that night. Instead, she sent a private nurse to take her place. Later, as nurses made their rounds, Graham overheard quiet whispers from the hallway. "Did you hear what happened with that lunatic today? He almost died on the table. Lost so much blood they had to call for an emergency transfusion." "Really? I thought Ms. Sinclair hated his guts. Why would she go to such lengths to save him?" "Hate? Please. That woman paid a fortune to secure the right blood type. If you ask me, the whole 'I hate you' thing is just an act. Who turns away a man that devoted?" Graham let out a dry, bitter laugh. "Yeah. Who could say no to a man that devoted?" He had believed her. Believed she would never be moved by someone like Luca. How naive. How humiliating. But not anymore. He was done believing. On the day of his discharge, Graham didn't wait for anyone. He signed the release forms himself, dressed without assistance, and walked out of the hospital alone. Just as he reached the curb to flag down a cab, Noelle appeared. "There you are," she said, hurrying over. "Why didn't you wait for me?" She lifted a neatly folded coat from her arm, trying to drape it over his shoulders. But Graham stepped back before she could touch him. Her hands froze in midair, the coat still hovering between them. Panic flickered in her eyes. "Are you mad at me?" she asked, her voice a little too soft, a little too fast. "I'm sorry. Work's been insane lately, I just couldn't get away. But I ask the nurse about you every day. I swear I did. Can you forgive me? Just this once?" Her eyes shimmered, and her voice began to tremble. People walking by were starting to stare. Graham didn't want to make a scene. He let out a vague sound of acknowledgement, neither yes nor no, and stepped into the cab first. On the ride home, Noelle kept trying to talk. She brought up little things. Made light jokes. Shared updates. Tried to fill the silence with something, anything. But Graham didn't play along. He closed his eyes and leaned back against the headrest, pretending to sleep. Time slipped by. Eventually, the car slowed to a stop. He opened his eyes to find they weren't home. They were parked in front of a restaurant. Noelle beamed. "We missed our anniversary. I figured tonight, we make up for it." She got out and walked around to open his door herself. Inside, the restaurant had been transformed. Flower arrangements lined the walls and windows, soft music drifted through the air, and in the center of it all was a private table, already filled with all of Graham's favorite dishes. They sat down across from each other. For a brief moment, it felt almost normal. Like nothing had ever gone wrong. Until the cake arrived. The server gently placed it on the table. Graham's fingers twitched. He was about to speak. But Noelle stood, smiling, and cut him a slice. "I made this for you," she said, placing it in front of him with pride. "A few days ago, you mentioned craving nut cake. I used our old recipe, remember? Taste it. Tell me if it's any good." Graham met her eyes. Saw the hope there. The need for him to play along. He let out a long, tired sigh. "Noel," he said, quietly. "I'm not the one who likes nut cake. And I'm allergic to nuts." His words landed at the exact moment her phone buzzed, her "favorites only" notification. She glanced at the screen. Her face went rigid. "I need to go." Something came up at the office. She didn't wait for a reply. Just grabbed her purse, threw on her coat, and added over her shoulder. "Finish up and grab a cab home, okay?" Graham gave a small nod, silent. She walked out. The moment she disappeared, he stood up and stepped into the night air. "Flag down a taxi. Follow the car that just left," he told the driver. The chase ended outside a tattoo studio. The sign buzzed faintly in the dark. And Graham's expression was unreadable as he watched the front door swing open. Graham stepped inside the building. He climbed the stairs to the second floor, his footsteps silent against the narrow staircase, until a sharp voice broke the quiet. "What the hell is wrong with you? You're supposed to be in the hospital. What are you doing here?" It was Noelle. Her voice was raw with anger. But underneath it, worry. Real, unfiltered worry. Luca didn't flinch. If anything, he smiled. A twisted, reverent kind of smile. "Today's my birthday," he said. "So I got myself a present." He turned away from her. Slowly, deliberately, he pulled off his shirt. Across his back, angry red and swollen from fresh ink, was a massive tattoo. Noelle's face. A perfect likeness. Eyes, lips, expression. Burned into his skin forever. She stared, stunned. Reached out and traced the image with her fingers, her voice dropping to a rasp. "I told you. I'll only ever love Graham. No one else. So why would you?" Her hands clenched into fists. Her expression darkened, unreadable emotions brewing behind her eyes. But Luca didn't stop. Bare-chested and bleeding slightly, he stepped closer. One step at a time. "When you saved my life," he whispered, "you became my reason for living. I've loved you for 8 years, Noelle. You've taken over every part of me. Every thought. Every breath. If you leave me, there's nothing left. Please," he said, voice breaking, "give me a reason to stay alive." And before she could speak, he leaned in. And kissed her. It was light. Barely a brush of lips. But it was enough. Enough to snap something open inside her. A lock undone. Whatever walls she had left collapsed in that instant. With a choked breath, Noelle threw herself into his arms and kissed him back, desperate, hungry, unrestrained. Outside the doorway, Graham stood frozen. His fingers dug so tightly into his palms that his nails nearly broke skin. He had prepared himself for this. Mentally, at least. But nothing, could shield him from the agony of seeing it happen. Seeing her choose him. His throat tightened. His chest burned. Tears blurred his vision. And still, he watched. Inside, the kissing deepened. Grew louder. More intimate. More obscene. Graham turned away. Silently. Swiftly. He didn't say a word. That night, back home, Graham moved on autopilot. He pulled out every gift Noelle had ever given him. The cufflinks. The photos. The anniversary watches. Letters. Jewelry. Art. Keepsakes. One by one, he photographed them. Listed them online. Marked the prices low. Within the hour, orders started pouring in. The next morning, Graham was still half asleep when the bedroom door burst open. "No, how could you sell our wedding rings?" Noelle dropped to her knees by the bed, frantic, her face pale with panic. "We promised, forever." No separation, remember? If you're mad at me, just tell me what I did wrong. Please. I'll fix it, I swear I will. Graham sat up slowly, eyes drifting to the deep violet marks scattered across her collarbone. Every bruise. Every kiss. None of them his. The words burned in his throat, "Don't you already know what you did wrong?" But he didn't say it. He said nothing. Instead, he offered a lie. "I was clearing out some things yesterday," he muttered. "Sold a bunch of stuff I didn't want anymore. Must have thrown the rings in by accident." It was a flimsy excuse. Full of holes. But Noelle bought it. "Don't ever do that again," she whispered, her voice cracking. "You have no idea how scared I was. Promise me, we'll never part ways." Scared, over a ring? What would she do if she knew he'd already signed the divorce papers? Graham lowered his head, hiding the scorn in his eyes. She had no idea what fear was. As if sensing something was off, Noelle cleared her schedule for the rest of the week. She stayed glued to his side. Cooking for him herself. Bringing him fresh flowers every morning. Ordering rare antiques, high-end watches, limited edition art. She even purchased a new estate in the hills. And then, the fireworks. An entire fireworks show, designed just for him, exploded over the Brookhaven skyline. The city's headline the next morning read, "Guess what surprise Mrs. Sinclair planned for her husband this time?" People envied them. Called them soulmates. Labeled them the perfect couple. But only Graham knew the truth. Every extravagant gift Noelle gave him. Luca got one too. She had become the very thing she once loathed. A woman who deceived. Who divided her heart. Who lived in two realities and told herself it wasn't betrayal. The night before Graham left, he woke in the middle of the night and wandered out to the kitchen for a glass of water. That's when he heard her voice. She was on the balcony, speaking in a hushed but irritated tone. "Miss Sinclair," a voice on speaker pleaded, "Mr. Crow just downed an entire bottle of pills. He's highly agitated and refusing treatment. Please, try to calm him down." Noelle exhaled sharply, pinching the bridge of her nose. "Put him on the phone." The line crackled. Then a scream. "Noelle. You listen to me. If you don't divorce Graham right now, I swear I won't take another step into that damn ER. I'll die before I watch you go back to him." Even through the glass, Graham could hear it. The hysteria. The desperation. The madness. And Noelle, caught right in the center of it all. But this time, Noelle didn't cave. Her voice was cold. Unshaken. "I told you. I will not divorce Graham. Not now. Not ever. If you're trying to push me with threats of dying, then you're wasting your time. That is my line. I will not cross it." The final words landed like stone, heavy, immovable. Graham, standing just beyond the glass, let out a quiet, bitter laugh. "She sleeps with the man, kisses him like he's air and water, and still clings to this ruined marriage like it's sacred. Still playing the part of the faithful wife. Still trying to wear the mask of love." The silence on the other end stretched long. Then Luca's voice returned, hoarse, small, and wounded. "Will you at least come see me? They pumped my stomach. I feel like hell. I just need to see you." Noelle let out a tired sigh. "Fine," she said. "But you stay put and wait for me." She ended the call. Walked to the table. Tore off a sticky note and scribbled a message. "Graham, urgent company trip, gone for 2 days. Eat well, wait for me. I'll take you to the beach when I'm back." She grabbed her coat and was out the door without a backward glance. Only when the front door slammed shut did Graham finally step out of the bedroom. He opened the closet and pulled out a suitcase. Started folding clothes into it, methodically. But before he could finish, a strange sound drifted through the house. A low, breathless moan. Then another. It was coming from the home theater. Frowning, he followed the sound. Pushed open the door. And froze. There, on the massive screen, in high-definition clarity. Luca. Naked. Pulling Noelle against him with fevered urgency. His face flushed, his voice ragged with want. "I missed you so much, please, just let me." His hands moved between her thighs. Noelle gasped. Bit her lip. Tilted her head back as desire overtook her eyes. She wrapped her legs around his waist. Pressed her mouth to his neck. Kissed him again, and again, and again. And then the sound. The raw, obscene soundtrack of betrayal. His wife's moans and Luca's groans melting together into something unbearable. Graham's stomach twisted violently. He stumbled back. Clawed his way to the bathroom. And vomited until there was nothing left to give. Graham spent the entire night in silence, sitting alone in the living room. He didn't move. Didn't sleep. Just sat. When the sky finally began to lighten, a message lit up his phone. He opened it, and saw the transfer. $200 million. The number stared back at him like a promise. For the first time in days, something inside him uncoiled. Not relief. Not peace. But resolve. He forwarded the signed share transfer agreement to Avery's company through his assistant. Then zipped up his suitcase, grabbed the handle, and headed toward the door. But just as he opened it, he stopped cold. Luca stood outside. Still wearing a hospital gown. Pale. Unstable. Like death itself had just spit him back out. Graham's stomach turned at the sight of him. All he could see was that video. Noelle's legs around him. Her mouth on his neck. Her breathless moans. Disgust flared in his chest. He kept his face cold and moved to walk past. But Luca stepped into his path. "You don't get it, do you?" His voice was hoarse, broken. "I'm the one who really loves her. Me. But she married you." His eyes grew wilder with every word. "I overdosed, Graham. I almost died for her. And still, she won't leave you." His voice cracked into a full scream. "Why? Why won't she choose me?" His eyes went red. Bloodshot. Unhinged. And for the first time, Graham felt it. Something darker. Something cold rise inside him. He opened his mouth to say it, to tell him the divorce was done. But before he could speak, a towel. Over his face. Damp. Smothering. The sharp, chemical sting hit his lungs. His arms flailed. Too late. And the last thing he heard before everything went black was Luca's voice, low and full of malice. "If she won't divorce you, then she can mourn you." Graham woke coughing. Choking. Smoke filled his throat. His nose. His lungs. He jolted up, eyes stinging, heart racing. He was lying on the floor of some kind of abandoned factory. Flames were already licking the walls. Thick smoke clouded the air. And a heavy steel security door sealed off the only exit. He staggered to his feet and rushed toward it, instinct overriding pain. The door handle was white-hot. He touched it. And screamed as blisters bubbled up across his palm. It didn't budge. Not even an inch. "Help," he coughed. "Someone, please, help me." No one answered. The heat pressed in from all sides. The air thinned by the second. On the ground now, gasping for oxygen, his face pressed to the cool concrete. Graham began to fade again. And this time, the flames were closer. Just as the darkness closed in again, Graham heard it. A voice. Familiar. Urgent. Then. Bang! The steel door was wrenched open from the outside. Graham! Can you hear me? Noelle's voice shook. Hold on, I'm getting you out of here. She grabbed him, half limp, coughing, and dragged him toward the exit. But before they could escape, a voice, piercing and deranged, echoed through the inferno. Noelle! Don't move. Luca! He stood at the far end of the warehouse, gripping a gasoline can. He hurled it to the floor, liquid splashing everywhere. Then, slow and deliberate, he raised a lighter. Choose, he screamed. You can only save one of us tonight. If you take him, you'll leave me here to burn. And I swear, I'll make sure that image haunts you forever. The flames glinted off his face. Twisted. Red. Like some unholy creature clawed straight from hell. And all Graham could think was, he's insane. Truly, deeply insane. Noelle's temple throbbed. Her chest heaved with fury. You're right, she shouted. You are crazy. If you want to die so badly, then go ahead and burn alone. But fate didn't wait. Before anyone could move, a cracking sound tore through the warehouse. A support beam overhead snapped loose and plunged toward them. In the blur of a heartbeat, Noelle made her choice. She let go of Graham and threw herself across the room, tackling Luca out of the way just in time. The lighter fell. Hit the gas. Humph. A wall of fire erupted instantly, roaring to life with a vengeance. Smoke choked the air. The heat blistered skin. The room became an oven. Noelle struggled to lift Luca, who had lost consciousness. She turned back, eyes meeting Graham's as he lay coughing, unable to move. Luca's in worse shape, she shouted. I'll get him out first, the ambulance is almost here. Don't worry. I'll come back for you. And then she was gone. She didn't look back. Flames licked closer. Graham couldn't think. Couldn't breathe. He forced himself upright, pain burning down his spine. With every ounce of strength he had left, he began crawling. Hands and knees torn open on broken concrete and hot metal. By the time he made it outside, his palms and legs were raw, bleeding. Medics rushed forward. But Noelle blocked them. Take Luca to the hospital, she snapped. Now. Don't touch anyone else. I'll take full responsibility. Her voice was icy steel. Her gaze locked on nothing but Luca. Graham sat on the ground, shaking, burned, and bloodied. He looked up at the woman who once swore she'd love him for a lifetime. Now guarding another man like her life depended on it. And all he could do, was smile. A sharp, hollow, self-mocking smile. Graham got into a cab. The ambulance sped in one direction. His taxi took the opposite route. Just like their lives. They were now moving toward different destinations. With no paths left to cross. When he got home, Graham quietly cleaned his wounds himself. No one offered help. No one was there to ask. He packed his documents and his suitcase. Left nothing behind. At the airport, he moved with mechanical precision. Check-in. Boarding pass. Baggage drop. Security. Gate. Just before boarding, he took out his phone. Snapped the SIM card in half. Dropped it into the nearest trash bin. And without a single glance over his shoulder, he walked toward the future. One that had no room for her. Meanwhile, back at the hospital, Noelle didn't relax until every scan and test was done, and the doctors confirmed that Luca was out of danger. Only then did her shoulders fall. "I've told you already," she said quietly. "I'm never divorcing Graham. Anything else, you can have. But this, what happened today, can't ever happen again." But before she could finish, Luca's hand slid under her blouse. His breath was hot against her ear. "Then punish me yourself," he whispered. He had made up his mind. No matter what it took, he was keeping her. Because today, in the fire, she'd made her choice. She had left him behind. She had saved Luca. That truth was enough for him. It was everything. He pulled her closer, more urgently now, more desperate to please. Noelle gasped. And this time, she didn't resist. She gripped the back of his head and kissed him hard, her body already trembling with anticipation. But then, a phone rang from the nightstand. Her hand twitched toward it. But Luca moved faster. He grabbed the phone. Ended the call. Switched it off. One smooth, practiced motion. Noelle frowned, her eyes flashing with annoyance. But before she could say a word, Luca's mouth was back on her skin. And just like that, she surrendered again. Logic drowned beneath waves of sensation. They didn't stop for hours. The hospital bed creaked beneath them, sheets tangled and damp with sweat. When it was over, they both lay still, limbs tangled, breath shallow. Eventually, Noelle drifted off beside him. She didn't know how much time had passed when she woke. The room was dark now. The windows filled with night. She turned her head. Luca was fast asleep, arms still wrapped tightly around her. Her gaze softened. She leaned in and pressed a gentle kiss to his forehead. Then, slowly, she slipped out of bed. Reached for her phone on the nightstand and padded barefoot into the hallway. She spotted a nurse doing her rounds. "Excuse me," she asked quietly. "Can you tell me how Graham Aldridge is doing?" The nurse blinked. "I'm sorry," she said with a polite smile. "Mr. Aldridge was never admitted to our hospital. I'm afraid we don't have any information on him." She didn't even finish the sentence before her expression twisted in alarm. "What do you mean he never came to the hospital?" Her voice rose, sharp and panicked. "He just came out of a fire. He was burned, he was injured, and you're telling me no one brought him here? What kind of professionals are you? What if something happened to him? Who's going to answer for that?" The young nurse flinched, face flushing with confusion and shame. I'm sorry, ma'am," she stammered. "We tried to bring Mr. Aldridge in. But, you insisted we take Mr. Crow first. You said, if anything went wrong, you would take full responsibility." The words fell into the hallway like ice. Everything went still. Noelle's breath caught in her throat. Because the nurse was right. She had said that. When she saw Luca unconscious, all she could think about was getting him to the hospital, fast. She told herself someone else would go back for Graham. But then Luca had woken up, and the chaos began all over again. And now? Now she couldn't even remember if she ever gave the order to send anyone for Graham. Panic clutched her chest. She yanked her phone out and dialed his number, only to freeze when she saw it. Hundreds of missed calls. Dozens of unread messages. All from her assistant. A sick feeling twisted her gut. She tapped the first notification. "Ms. Sinclair, the board is calling an emergency shareholders meeting. The CEO position is being re-evaluated." Another. "We're moments away from a vote. If you don't come immediately, it'll be too late." And then. "The meeting has ended. Avery has been elected as the new CEO." For a moment, Noelle felt the world tilt sideways. The phone trembled in her hand. She stood motionless in the hallway, as if struck by lightning. Her hands clenched at her sides as she dialed her assistant's number. It rang once, twice. Pick up, she muttered under her breath. Pick up. Finally, a click. Why the hell was Avery at the company, she demanded. Who gave her the authority to call a vote while I was gone? Her assistant's voice was cautious. Almost fearful. Because, Ms. Sinclair, she holds 50% of the company shares. Noelle froze. That's impossible, she snapped. There's no way she could have gotten half the shares. But even as she said it, her voice faltered. Her mind raced. There was only one way Avery could have secured 50%. Only one person who even had that much stock to offer. Graham. Unless he had sold his shares. After the divorce. To her. To Avery. But Noelle dismissed the thought almost instantly. No. Graham wouldn't divorce her. He wouldn't. There had to be some kind of mistake. Frantic now, she redialed his number, again and again. But every time, she was met with the same cold, mechanical voice. The number you are trying to reach is unavailable. Please try again later. That sterile message sliced through her panic like a blade. A sick, hollow feeling took root in her chest. She couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. She grabbed her bag, ran out of the hospital, and jumped into her car. She had to get home. Now. The engine roared to life as she slammed her foot down on the gas. Traffic lights blurred past, red, yellow, red again. The GPS barked out warnings. You are exceeding the speed limit. Hazard ahead. She didn't care. Didn't lift her foot. What was normally a 30-minute drive, she cut in half. 15 minutes of reckless desperation. She skidded into the driveway, sprinted up the stairs, and burst into the house. Graham. Silence. Room by room, she tore through the house. Calling his name. Yanking open closets, drawers, suitcases. Nothing. Not a single piece of clothing. Not a note. Not even his scent on the pillows. Every trace of him was gone. The house, so full just days ago, now echoed with absence. And for the first time, Noelle felt afraid of the silence. Graham had really left. No. 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 It couldn't be. They had just celebrated their anniversary, 3 years of marriage, less than 2 weeks ago. Her eyes darted toward the calendar on the wall. And then, her heart dropped. 14 days. Today marked exactly 14 days since their anniversary. In a sudden burst of panic, she remembered the gift he'd given her. The one he told her not to open for 7 days. She hadn't touched it since. She ran into the study and yanked the box from the shelf. Her hands trembled. Maybe this was just a punishment. Maybe Graham was angry she didn't go back for him at the warehouse. Maybe he just wanted to scare her, teach her a lesson. She opened the box. Inside. A crisp, official document. Her eyes locked on the top line. Divorce agreement. Signed. Sealed. His name written in black ink at the bottom. Her knees buckled. She sank to the floor, the paper trembling in her hands. It was real. Graham had left her. And they were, legally, done. But, why? They hadn't even slept together yet, she and Luca. Not until after the fire. So why would Graham have filed before that? Her mind spun in circles, until it stopped cold. A memory surged back. A single flash of something she had overlooked. And with it, her whole body began to shake. Of course. It all made sense now. Graham had seen her pick up that scarf. The one Luca had used, touched, desecrated. And that was the moment everything broke. That was when he signed the divorce papers. He had been the one to pull her out of darkness. When her world had fallen apart, when her mother's betrayal shattered her trust in love, Graham had stayed. Held her together. Taught her how to breathe again. And what had she done? She had let Luca get close. Let herself be tempted. She didn't stop him when she should have. She kissed him. Sank into him. And when it mattered most, when Graham lay broken and burning, she chose someone else. She had left him. "I'm a monster," she whispered. Then, without hesitation, she raised her hand. And slapped herself across the face. Hard. But the sting did nothing to quiet the pain beneath her skin. Her chest felt like it was caving in. She pressed both hands to her face, trying to hold herself together. But it was useless. Tears poured through her fingers, landing in thick drops on the floor. "Noelle? What's wrong?" Luca's voice startled her. He had just woken up, only to find she wasn't in the hospital bed beside him. And now, he was here. Uninvited. Unbothered. Certain. Because in his mind, her saving him from the fire meant everything. Meant that she loved him. He walked in casually. But stopped when he saw her curled up on the couch, shoulders shaking, face buried in her palms. And then he saw it. The divorce papers on the table. A wide smile spread across his face. "Divorce papers," he said, stunned with delight. "So it's really happening. You finally left Graham." He knelt beside her, his voice warm, possessive. "I knew it. Deep down, I always knew. You love me. And now, finally, we can be together. No more hiding. No more sharing. You're mine, just mine." He leaned in to kiss her. But this time, Noelle shoved him away. Hard. Her voice was cold. Flat. "I never agreed to this divorce. I'm going to find him," she said. Luca froze, his smile vanishing in an instant. "What?" She stood and grabbed her coat. "I have to find him. I have to bring him back." "No," Luca breathed, eyes wide with disbelief. "Noelle, he's already left you. He filed for divorce. He doesn't want you anymore. Why are you still chasing him?" He lunged forward, blocking her path, eyes wild and bloodshot. "I'm the one who loves you. I'm the one who never gave up. Look at me, look at me. We're supposed to be together." But Noelle was unmoved. She looked him straight in the eye, wiped the last of her tears away, and said, "I don't love you, Luca. I never did. The only person I've ever loved is Graham. I don't want to live without him." Her voice was calm now. Clear. Resolute. "And I won't let you keep me from finding him." She reached for her bag. Then paused. "I'll make sure you're taken care of financially. That's all I owe you." That final sentence. Like a blade through Luca's ribs. He staggered back, wounded. Shattered. Luca couldn't make sense of it. Just hours ago, everything had felt right. She'd kissed him. Chosen him. Held him in her arms. Now, she was saying she'd never loved him. That she was going back to Graham. No. No, it couldn't be real. It had to be some kind of test. A trick. A punishment. He refused to believe it. In a burst of panic, Luca bolted for the balcony. He climbed up onto the railing, legs dangling over the edge. "Noelle," he shouted. "Don't you dare leave. If you go looking for him, I'll jump. I'll die right here in front of you." Noelle's eyes widened in horror. Her voice cracked like a whip. "Luca, get down. Now." But he didn't move. Didn't blink. His bloodshot eyes stayed locked on hers. "You already threw me away," he spat. So what's left? You said you don't love me. So tell me, what reason do I have to stay alive? His voice was shrill, splintered with rage and despair. I mean it, Noelle. If you take even one step toward the door, I'm gone. He leaned forward, swaying slightly. Daring her. Noelle clenched her fists so tightly her knuckles turned white. A vein pulsed violently at her temple. She knew Luca too well. This wasn't an empty threat. He meant it. All of it. And so, once again, she gave in. Luca smiled the moment she stepped away from the door. With childlike triumph, he wrapped his arms around her and pulled her into his chest. Stay with me tonight, he murmured, nuzzling her neck. Let's sleep together again. Just like before. But this time, Noelle didn't respond. She gently pushed him away, her face hollow with exhaustion. I can't, she said quietly. There's a situation at work. I have to deal with it tonight. And with that, she turned and walked into the study, closing the door behind her. It wasn't an excuse. Ever since Avery had taken her place as CEO, the company had been bleeding. Several key partners were already reconsidering their contracts. If she didn't act fast, she would lose even more. So Noelle spent the entire night redrafting partnership proposals. Offering steeper discounts, extra exclusivity, slashing profits just to retain her network. She hit send on 4 separate emails. No replies. Silence. Until one finally came. Only one. Montrose Group responded, offering to meet her in person for further discussion. It wasn't much. But it was something. Noelle leaned back in her chair, chest rising and falling. For the first time in days, she felt a sliver of calm. Maybe not hope. But something like it. And with that, sleep finally began to tug at her eyes. But every time she closed her eyes, Graham came back to her. Not in anger. Not in flames. But in memory. Him holding her hand on quiet walks after dinner. The way he laughed at dumb movies as they curled up on the couch. His sleeves rolled up as they pruned roses in the garden together. Tiny, domestic, irreplaceable moments. And then. Always the same ending. Graham, walking out of their home. Never looking back. Noelle jolted awake, drenched in sweat, lungs gasping as if she were drowning. Her chest rose and fell with ragged desperation. Her eyes burned red. Sleep was no longer an option. She stayed at her desk, motionless, until the first light of morning poured through the curtains. The next day, Noelle stood in the dressing room, adjusting her outfit for the Montrose Group's evening gala. She had one shot at regaining a foothold. She had to look the part. But just as she finished smoothing the front of her dress, she caught something in the mirror. Behind her. Luca. Silent. Staring. His face dark with fury. Where are you going? He demanded. To Graham? Again? His voice rose in volume and pitch. Is that it? You want to kill me, don't you? Would you finally be happy if I just died? Noelle closed her eyes. Exhaled slowly. Then turned. I'm not going to see him. I have a business meeting. A critical one. Please, Luca. Don't make things worse. I'm asking you, just stay out of this. Without waiting for his reply, she grabbed her phone and stepped outside. She didn't notice the way his eyes narrowed behind her. Didn't hear the soft thud of his fist hitting the wall once she was gone. The business world had sharp teeth. And word traveled fast. By the time Noelle arrived at the Montrose Gala, everyone already knew that she was no longer CEO of Sinclair Ventures. The whispers were immediate. And the shift was brutal. The same people who used to hang on her every word. The socialites, the investors, the wives of key partners, now avoided her like a scandal. Their smiles were thinner. Their eyes flicked past her. Not a single hand reached for hers. Noelle stood still in the middle of the crowd, dressed to perfection. And completely invisible. It wasn't unfamiliar. Years ago, when news broke of her mother's affair with a college student, her entire high school had turned its back on her. She had been 15. Alone. Humiliated. Only Graham had stood beside her then. He made jokes just to see her smile. Sat beside her when others moved away. Held her hand like it meant something. Protected her dignity like it was fragile glass. And back then, she had sworn she'd love him forever. She had promised she'd never hurt him. Never betray the only person who never abandoned her. And yet, she did. She lost him. Because of weakness. Because of ego. Because she stopped fighting for what mattered most. A sharp, tearing pain gripped her chest. It came suddenly, visceral and deep. And it wouldn't let go. Noelle ducked into the restroom, pressing a hand over her burning eyes. She locked herself in a stall and tried to breathe through the ache in her chest. Her reflection had become unrecognizable. Mascara smudged. Eyes bloodshot. She looked like someone who hadn't slept in weeks, because she hadn't. And still, she forced herself to rejoin the party. She waited until the gala was winding down, until the clinking of glasses and fake laughter had thinned. Then she walked toward Victor Montrose, the CEO of Montrose Group. This was her last chance. But she'd barely begun her pitch, hadn't said more than 2 sentences, when chaos exploded from the shadows. Watch out. Noelle grabbed Victor's arm just as a glass bottle came hurtling through the air. It missed his temple by an inch, smashing against the marble floor and erupting into 1,000 shards. Gasps filled the room. People froze. Luca stepped into the light. Eyes wild. Chest heaving. A second bottle gripped in his hand. He pointed straight at Victor, voice shrill and venomous. You piece of shit. Who the hell gave you permission to steal my woman? Before anyone could react, he lunged. Reaching for Victor's throat. Noelle shoved herself between them, struggling to push Luca back. But he was beyond reason. Thrashing like an animal, his nails catching her cheek and slicing skin. Blood welled up instantly. That was the breaking point. Noelle slapped him. Hard. The crack echoed through the hall. Luca stumbled back and hit the ground. His hand flew to his cheek, stunned. His eyes filled with tears. You hit me, he choked. You actually hit me? He sat there on the floor, trembling. I gave you everything, Noelle. Everything. I worshipped you. I destroyed myself for you. I chased you for 8 years like a damn dog. Let everyone laugh at me, humiliate me. And this is what I get? You throw me away for him? And now you hit me, for him? Do you think that's fair? Do you think I deserve this? Noelle stood still. Blood slid slowly down her cheek. But her eyes. Her eyes held nothing but exhaustion. Luca, she said, her voice low and ragged. I've told you. Over and over. I had a job to do tonight. A business opportunity, maybe my last one. And because of you, Graham divorced me. Because of you, I lost my position at Sinclair. You say you love me? But all you've done is drag me down. Sabotage me. Hurt me. Her voice cracked. I can't do this anymore. I'm done. Please, I'm begging you, let me go. Just let me go. Her body trembled as she said it. Not with fear. But with release. Like she had finally said something she should have said years ago. By now, Victor Montrose had seen enough. He'd nearly taken a glass bottle to the skull over a woman he barely knew. And now, he understood. Everyone in the industry had heard rumors about that man, Luca. The stalker. The lunatic. The one who'd tailed Noelle for years while she clung so loyally to her husband. Victor used to admire her for that. Her discipline. Her restraint. Her unwavering love for Graham Aldridge. But clearly, that image had been an illusion too. Victor didn't give a damn about their love triangle. But he wasn't about to let some lunatic humiliate him in public. He snapped his fingers. Two black-suited bodyguards stepped forward and tackled Luca to the floor. Victor rolled up his sleeves. "You think I'm like Graham?" he growled, stepping over him. "That man's too polite to call you out. So his cheating wife handed you over, and he stayed quiet. But me? You throw a bottle at me?" He punched Luca hard in the jaw. "I don't let that shit slide." Another punch. "You think you're some tragic lover? You're nothing but a side piece. A nobody. You don't belong at parties, you belong in the sewer where you crawled out from." Luca's face swelled instantly, red and raw with pain. His mouth filled with blood. His chest heaved with humiliation. He turned, eyes blazing, toward Noelle. Expecting her to help. To stop this. "Are you just going to stand there?" he choked. "Let them beat me like this? Let him say that about me?" But Noelle just stood still. She looked at him, really looked at him. Hair wild. Eyes manic. Face distorted by rage, shame, and madness. How had it come to this? Not long ago, she had everything. A gentle, loyal husband. Wealth, reputation, control. And now? She'd thrown it all away, for this. Because she hadn't known when to draw a line. Because she'd indulged too long in her own confusion. Because she thought she was invincible. Her lips curled into a cold smile. "He's not wrong," she said, voice icy. "You are just a side piece. And I was a fool. I let you get close. I lied to myself. I betrayed the only man who ever truly loved me." She took a step forward. "But I never loved you. Not once. My heart always belonged to Graham. It still does. That's never changed." Her voice dropped lower. Sharper. "Don't come near me again. I don't care if you live or die. You're nothing to me now." The room erupted. Whispers flew through the crowd like wildfire. Did she just say that? Wasn't he the guy who tried to kill himself for her? She really said he's just a side piece? Phones were already recording. Faces turned. People smirked. And Luca? He broke. Whatever was left of him. Shattered. Wait, did she just admit she cheated? Didn't she just post about loving her husband the other day? All fake, obviously. I mean, have you seen Graham? And she slept with that guy? Too late for regret now. People like her don't deserve real love. The whispers came like daggers, each one more merciless than the last. Heads turned. Phones discreetly raised. A few people even started filming. Luca stood frozen in the center of it all. His face drained of color. His chest heaving with shock and disbelief. Only now did it hit him. Something in Noelle had truly changed. She wasn't going to run after him this time. She wasn't going to soothe him. She wasn't going to look back. He forced a shaky smile and reached toward her. I'm done, okay? I won't make a scene anymore. Let's go home. Please. I'll apologize to him, he added quickly, nodding at Victor, as if that would fix it. Whatever it takes. I'll make it right. His eyes brimmed with tears. His voice trembled with panic. But Noelle didn't even flinch. Didn't look at him. Didn't speak. She turned, bowed politely to Victor. "I'm so sorry for all of this," she said calmly. And then, she walked away. No theatrics. No drama. Just the cold silence of someone who had finally, irrevocably, let go. Behind her, Luca screamed. "Noelle! Don't go. I'll change. I swear, I'll change. Don't leave me." But she never looked back. Private lounge, later that night. Noelle sat alone in a velvet booth, pouring shot after shot of whiskey down her throat. The lights were low. The bass from the club below thudded like a second heartbeat. 3 of her closest girlfriends sat helplessly across from her, exchanging worried looks. "Enough, Noelle," one of them begged. "You've had too much. Please. Look, I get it. You're hurting. But this isn't the way." Noelle didn't respond. Her eyes were vacant. Her fingers clenched the neck of the bottle like it was the last thing tethering her to earth. It was no use. They couldn't reach her. Until finally, one of them, desperate and flustered, came up with a plan. "Fine. She wants Graham," she whispered to the others. "Let's give her Graham." She pulled out her phone. "Let's hire someone. Just for tonight. Let her say whatever she needs to say. Get it out of her system." The other 2 hesitated. But they were out of options. Outside the room, Mira slipped a black card into a young man's hand. $1 million, she said, her voice cool and steady. "It's all yours, if you can get that woman inside to put down the bottle and leave with you. But listen carefully." Her eyes narrowed, voice turning cold. "If you lay so much as a finger on her the wrong way, you'll regret it. Badly." The man's eyes lit up like a kid seeing candy. $1 million for escorting a drunk woman home? "Piece of cake," he muttered. He pushed the door open and stepped inside. There, in the dim light of the private lounge, Noelle sat slumped in a velvet booth, clutching a nearly empty bottle of whiskey, mumbling to herself with glassy eyes. "Graham, where did you go? I miss you so much. I was wrong. Please come back." The guy's lips curved slightly. "So that's the game." He leaned in close, adopting a gentle, coaxing tone. "Hey, come on now. That's enough, okay? Let me take you home." Noelle didn't react. She just kept rocking, her voice hoarse and broken. "I miss you, Graham, please, please, come home." And that was his cue. He leaned closer, so close his breath tickled her ear. "I'm right here," he whispered. "It's me. Graham." His fingers slithered under the edge of her blouse, creeping upward like a snake in the dark. Outside, no one could see. He wasn't stupid. Anyone willing to toss out $1 million like loose change must have serious wealth. And this woman? If she was worth that kind of money drunk, imagine what he could get if he really played his cards right. He smirked. Time to seal the deal. He leaned in, lips barely an inch from hers. But just as he was about to whisper again, her hand snapped up and clamped around his throat like a vice. "You think you can seduce me?" she snarled. Her eyes were wild. Red-rimmed. But in that moment, terrifyingly clear. "It's because of people like you that Graham left me. You disgusting bastard." The man gasped. His smirk vanished, replaced by panic as her fingers tightened. His eyes rolled back, face turning a deep, alarming shade of purple. He clawed at her wrist, trying desperately to break free. Stop, can't, breathe." His voice was strangled and faint. And suddenly, one terrifying thought echoed in his brain. I should have listened to the woman. Outside the room, the others finally heard the strangled cries for help. They rushed in and tore the young man from Noel's grasp. He collapsed to the floor, coughing violently, one hand clutching his bruised neck, his face a mask of terror and disbelief. Mira didn't need to ask, she knew exactly what had happened. Her face darkened with disgust. "Get out," she snapped coldly. "Now." The guy didn't need to be told twice. Scrambling to his feet, he stumbled out the door like a kicked dog, gasping for breath. Silence returned to the room. Noelle sat motionless, her eyes still glazed, fingers trembling slightly. After what felt like hours, she finally blinked, coming back to herself. Her friends gently offered to take her home, their voices soft and cautious. But she shook her head. "No," she murmured. I need to be alone." 1 a.m. The streets were empty, soaked in the orange haze of dying streetlights. Noelle walked unsteadily down the center of the road, her heels echoing like a slow metronome in the quiet night. She didn't want to go back. Not to that house. Not to the hollow, echoing space where Graham once laughed, once kissed her, once loved her. She told herself, maybe he was still out there. Maybe, just maybe, he was waiting somewhere in the dark, hoping she'd come find him. Hoping she'd say sorry. The lie gave her just enough strength to keep walking. She turned down a narrow alley, dim and silent, until a sound stopped her cold. Crying. A soft, broken sob echoing off the graffiti-stained walls. She peered into the shadows. There, two guys had a teenage boy cornered against a brick wall. One of them shoved him, the other raised a clenched fist. Noelle froze. For a split second, the alley dissolved. Her memory took over. Graham, 17, charming, too pretty for his own good, had once been ambushed in an alley just like this. Back in high school, some thug who'd been rejected by a girl, jealous that she had a thing for Graham, had lured him out and tried to beat him senseless. She had arrived just in time back then. He hadn't gotten hurt, but he was terrified. That night, he came down with a high fever and trembled in her arms until morning. She'd never forgotten that helplessness. Now, her alcohol-fogged mind blurred the past with the present. The boy in front of her was Graham. Or at least, her heart insisted he was. And if she didn't act, he'd get hurt again. Her blood roared. Her grip tightened around her purse. "Let him go," she shouted, voice fierce and echoing. Before the thugs could react, she charged. No hesitation. No thought. Only rage. Only instinct. She threw herself at them like a woman possessed. But Noelle was in no condition to fight. She'd been drinking all night. She hadn't slept properly in days. Her body was running on fumes, shaky, depleted, and dangerously close to collapse. The two thugs recovered quickly and wasted no time taking control. One of them grabbed a rusted iron rod from beside a trash bin and swung it straight at her head. "You crazy bitch. You think you can touch me and walk away?" The metal connected with a sickening crack. Blood spilled down the side of Noelle's face. Before she could catch her breath, the other thug kicked her hard in the stomach, sending her sprawling to the ground. He spat on her with a sneer. "Hero complex, huh? You're nothing. Just some washed-up rich bitch playing savior." They both laid into her, boots crashing against her ribs, her back, her side. Again and again. Unloading whatever venom had built up in their worthless lives. She curled in on herself, pain searing through every nerve, vision blurring into red static. Just as her consciousness began to slip, distant voices broke through the haze. Footsteps. Shouting. "Mira." The guys turned, saw a group of women rushing into the alley, and took off without a second thought. Noelle lay in a crumpled heap, her breath shallow and uneven. Her friends rushed to her, panic in their eyes, hands trembling as they lifted her battered body. "Stay with us, Noelle. Can you hear me? Call an ambulance. Now." But before they could stabilize her, Noelle suddenly shoved them away and stumbled to her feet. She staggered past them, her movements wild and unsteady, until she reached the boy still curled up in the corner. She dropped to her knees, pulled him into her arms, and whispered with a broken, trembling voice. "It's okay, Graham. You're safe now. I'm here. I've got you." The boy looked up. His cheeks were streaked with tears, his eyes wide with disbelief. "Thank you," he sobbed. "Thank you for saving me, thank you." Noelle froze. Her arms slackened. Her body went rigid as the truth punched her in the gut. This wasn't Graham. She pulled back slowly, releasing the boy, her heart sinking into an icy void. Later, at the hospital, her friends stood by while the doctors cleaned her wounds, bandaged her head, and ran tests. The diagnosis: a mild concussion, bruised ribs, a possible hairline fracture. She was lucky to be alive. The doctor insisted she stay for observation. But Noelle shook her head before he even finished the sentence. "No. I can't stay. I have to go. I have to find Graham. I need to talk to him. I need to tell him I'm sorry." Her voice cracked. Desperate. Determined. Her friends exchanged glances, helpless, worried. One of them stepped forward gently. "Noelle, we haven't heard anything yet. You need to rest. If your body breaks down now, how are you going to find him?" Another chimed in, voice firm but kind. "We've called in every connection we have. The moment we hear anything, you'll be the first to know. But please, just take care of yourself." Noelle covered her face with her hands. Her shoulders shook with quiet, ragged sobs. Everything hurt, her body, her pride, her soul. And most of all, the echoing silence where Graham used to be. "We've searched everywhere," Noelle whispered hoarsely. "Days and nights, and still not a trace of Graham. Nothing. It's like he vanished." Her voice cracked. And then the room went still, too still. Mira hesitated for a long time before speaking. "There might be one person who knows where he went." Noelle lifted her head sharply. Mira shifted uncomfortably. "Before Graham left, he sold all his shares to Avery." That name dropped like a stone in water. "If anyone knows where he is, it's her." "But..." She trailed off. Everyone else in the room exchanged wary glances. They all knew the history. Noelle and Avery had been rivals for years, cutthroat competitors, always circling each other in high heels and sharper claws. If Avery really knew anything, there was no way she'd give it up easily. But Noelle didn't even blink. "I don't care what she wants. If she knows where Graham is, I'll give her anything. I'll do anything." Avery's estate, 3 hours later. The wrought iron gates had stayed shut in Noelle's face for hours. But she didn't budge. She stood there, in heels, under the relentless sun. 3 hours. Not moving. Not flinching. Finally, the guards relented and let her in. She followed the winding path up to the main house and found Avery in the garden, wearing pristine white linen and oversized sunglasses, carefully snipping rose stems with silver shears. She didn't look up. Well. Ms. Sinclair," Avery drawled, her tone dripping with venomous amusement. "Didn't expect to see you here, not while your lunatic boyfriend's still loose." She finally glanced up, one perfect brow arched in mock surprise. "Or wait, don't tell me, you're here to beg for your position back." Noelle drew a slow breath. She had known this would happen. She had rehearsed it all in her head. The condescension. The smirk. The victory in Avery's eyes. After the party debacle, everything had collapsed like dominoes. The internet crucified her. The company stock nosedived. The board turned on her. Every project, every decision, ripped from her hands and handed to Avery. In just a few days, she'd gone from boardroom queen to scandalized has-been. She swallowed the bile rising in her throat. "I'm not here about the company," she said quietly. "I came to ask about Graham. I need to know where he went." That stopped Avery in her tracks. And then, she laughed. Loud and sharp, like breaking glass. "That's your idea of begging," she said, still chuckling. "Because it sounds more like a threat. Honestly, if I didn't know better, I'd think you were here to slap me." Noelle's jaw clenched so hard her teeth ached. A vein throbbed at her temple. But she didn't move. Didn't flinch. Didn't break. Not yet. She had never bowed her head to anyone. Not in childhood, not in college, not in the boardroom. She had always been the one others looked up to, praised, envied, chased. Graham was the only exception. The only person she had ever yielded to out of love. But now, for just a whisper of his whereabouts, she bent her pride. "Please," Noelle said, her voice low but steady. "Tell me where Graham went." Avery didn't answer right away. She just tilted her head and smiled, watching her like a cat watches a wounded bird struggling to breathe. Then she slowly shook her head. "Why don't you get on your knees and beg?" she said, sweetly cruel. "If I'm in a good mood, maybe I'll feel generous." Noelle's expression darkened. "Don't push it." Her tone turned hard, clipped. That was enough to wipe the amusement from Avery's face. With a sharp flick of her wrist, she tossed the garden shears onto the table. They clattered against the metal surface with a violent clang. "If you're not here to grovel properly, get the hell off my property," she snapped. "Security, show her out." But before the guards could even move, there was a loud, hollow thud as Noelle fell to her knees. The sound echoed through the garden like thunder. "Please," she said again. Her voice broke this time. "Tell me where he is. I'm begging you." Gone was the haughty woman everyone feared in the boardroom. Gone was the flawless, untouchable Sinclair heiress. What knelt on the ground now was just a woman who had lost the only man she had ever truly loved. Avery blinked, visibly surprised for a moment. But she recovered quickly, her smirk returning with surgical precision. "I said I'd consider it," she drawled. "I never said getting on your knees would actually work." The silence that followed was thick and cruel. And Noelle realized it all at once. Avery had never intended to help her. She just wanted to humiliate her. The rage rose up so fast it drowned her sorrow. She launched herself forward, fists flying, aiming straight for Avery's smug face. But Avery was faster. With a practiced move, she grabbed Noelle's wrist, twisted it behind her back, and slammed her to the ground. "Look at you," she snarled, landing a punch to her ribs. "Acting like some tragic heroine. Didn't you screw around first?" Another punch. "You think Graham should forgive you now? After everything?" She didn't even give Noelle a chance to respond. "Get her out of my sight." Two guards rushed over, dragged Noelle up by her arms, and threw her out through the wrought iron gate like a bag of trash. Avery dusted her hands off with satisfaction, then turned back toward her roses. "Pathetic," she muttered. "Absolutely pathetic." With a flick of her wrist, Avery picked up her phone from the side table, tapped the screen, and arched a smug brow at the camera. "So," she drawled, her voice light, casual, laced with triumph. "Told you I was treating you to a good show today." On the other end of the video call, Graham didn't respond immediately. After the divorce, he'd spent months drifting, country to country, sunset to sunset, no fixed destination, no one to answer to. At the moment, he was sitting on a weathered stone wall somewhere in Serbia, watching the horizon melt into golden light. Avery was one of the very few people who had his new contact info, only because she'd been involved in the post-divorce transfer of company shares. He hadn't expected her to reach out beyond that, but she did. Frequently. Often with no real reason. Today's message had been especially vague. "Don't go anywhere," she'd said on the phone earlier, voice humming with mischief. "I'm about to show you something worth watching." He'd rolled his eyes, tossed the phone aside, and returned his gaze to the breathtaking sunset. But curiosity had eventually won. He picked the phone back up just in time to witness a scene of chaos, cruelty, and collapse. Noelle, on her knees. Noelle, pleading. Noelle, dragged out of Avery's villa like garbage. He watched it all, expression unreadable. Then he finally spoke, his voice quiet, but weighted. "What the hell do you have against her?" On screen, Avery froze. The teasing glint in her eyes faded. Her posture straightened ever so slightly. And for the first time in a long time, she let her mask slip. She looked him dead in the eye through the screen. "Because I'm in love with you." Graham blinked. For a second, he wasn't sure if he'd misheard. She said it so cleanly, so bluntly, without her usual sarcasm or games. "I was jealous," she continued, her voice flat. "Jealous that she got to marry you. So I made her life hell, every chance I got." The silence that followed was thick with disbelief. Graham stared at her through the screen, this woman he'd gone to middle school with, who had once been just a friend, then a distant acquaintance, then a boardroom adversary. It didn't add up. There had been no signs. No flirtation. No tension. And yet, here she was, bearing her bitterness like an old scar. Avery held his gaze and added, softly this time. "I'm not joking." Avery cleared her throat softly, her tone shifting into something uncharacteristically sincere. "I've liked you for a long time," she said, eyes steady. "Back then, you were always with Noelle. I tried to work up the courage to tell you how I felt, but just when I was about to, I found out you'd already said yes to her confession. So I buried it. I really thought she'd cherish you, but instead, she went and cheated on you. With that lunatic." Graham couldn't help it, he laughed. It was quick and dry and utterly unbothered. "Avery," he said, shaking his head with a half-smile, "even if you did confess back then, I wouldn't have had any extra shares to sell you anyway. Look, it's getting dark here, and I'm starving. Thanks for the entertainment tonight. If you're ever in town again, dinner's on me." He hung up before she could respond. Then leaned back, exhaled slowly, and stared up at the twilight sky. She hadn't been joking. That much was clear now. And yet, he felt nothing. No flutter of emotion, no temptation, no curiosity. His last relationship had already drained him of more love than he thought he had to give. He wasn't ready, hell, he wasn't even interested. Not now. Not when the solitude tasted this sweet. He had money. He had time. He had sunsets like this one. For now, that was enough. The next morning, Graham stepped out of his rented flat, planning to grab a coffee and catch a train to the coast. But something, or someone, was already waiting on the front step. Avery. Sitting on the stone stoop with a single rose in her hand. He froze. "Avery," he blinked, stunned. "What the hell are you doing here?" She turned around and beamed up at him like they were old friends meeting by chance in a park. "You said you'd buy me dinner," she chirped, as if the long-haul flight and cross-continental drop-in were nothing more than a friendly RSVP. "I figured since you invited me so warmly, it'd be rude to decline, so here I am." She extended the rose toward him. "You said yesterday that this was the prettiest one in my garden. Thought I'd bring it to you myself." The stem had been carefully trimmed, the thorns removed. It didn't prick his fingers when he accepted it. Yesterday, before she'd streamed the chaos at her villa, she'd shown him a quick video of her rose garden. He'd made an offhand comment, "That one looks great," without much thought. Clearly, she had remembered. And now, here she was. In Serbia. With a flower and a smile. He was many things, but heartless wasn't one of them. And when a woman crosses continents because of your casual invitation, you take her to dinner. That very day, Avery signed a short-term lease on a charming garden villa, right next door to Graham's. And from then on, she appeared like clockwork. One day it was a morning walk along the cliffs. The next, a midday market tour. By the end of the week, they were sharing dinners, laughs, and the easy rhythm of people who had long since stopped trying too hard. Their chemistry was casual but unmistakably growing warmer. That evening, Graham was having a quiet solo dinner at a small bistro when a burst of excited chatter broke out at the next table. 3 young women had just sat down, bubbling with energy. "Did you see that woman outside?" one of them whispered loudly. "The one holding flowers? She's gorgeous." "I did. She had a ring in her hand too. I bet she's about to propose to her boyfriend, so romantic. Hurry up and eat. If we're quick, we might catch the whole proposal scene." Graham looked up, mildly curious. Through the window, he could see a small crowd gathering at the front of the restaurant, blocking the view of whoever they were watching. He shrugged and went back to his meal. 10 minutes later, he stood to pay. On a whim, he ordered a second helping of the house special. Avery might like it. As he replied to a message from his elderly landlady, he didn't notice the woman in front of him until it was too late. He bumped into her chest first, almost dropping the takeout container. "I'm sore," he began, and then froze. There she was. Noelle. Kneeling on one knee. Eyes glistening. Cradling a giant bouquet of red roses in her arms. "Graham," she said breathlessly, "I love you. Will you marry me?" Chapter 15. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Then applause. Then someone yelled, "Say yes. Say yes." And the chant caught fire. Graham stood motionless. Noelle's eyes were glassy, her voice trembling. "I finally found you," she whispered, her entire body trembling with emotion. "I'm sorry. I know I was wrong. Every day without you has been hell. Please, forgive me. Give me another chance. Let's start over. Please." Graham's expression darkened. His lips curled, not in confusion, but in disgust. He took 2 deliberate steps backward, like she was something infectious. "We're divorced," he said flatly. "I told you not to follow me. Stop showing up like this. We're done." He turned to leave. But Noelle lunged forward. With startling force, she pulled him into a desperate hug, arms clamped around his torso like a lifeline. Refusing to let go. In that moment, curled into Graham's arms, Noelle finally felt a flicker of peace in her chest. Like a storm had quieted. "Please don't leave," she whispered. "I've missed you so much. I'll do anything, anything, if you can just find it in your heart to forgive me." Her voice cracked. Tears slipped down her cheeks before she even noticed. But what she didn't see, what she didn't want to see, was how Graham's face had turned gray. His lips pressed together in a grimace. His jaw clenched. Then, violently, he shoved her off. Hard. He staggered away from her and doubled over by the sidewalk. Seconds later, he vomited. All of it, his dinner, the beer, the bitter taste of her skin on his memory, came pouring out. He was shaking. Because every time Noelle got close, he could see it again. The tattoo parlor. The video. The way she moaned for someone else. The betrayal carved into his skull like a scar. It made him sick. Literally. Noelle stood frozen. Her face drained of all color. Even her fingertips trembled as she reached for him. "Are you okay?" she said, voice barely a whisper. "Let me take you to a hospital, please. Maybe you caught something bad on the road?" She tried to touch him again. He recoiled. "Don't touch me." His voice was low and cold. "You're filthy." The words were weightless. But when they hit her, they shattered something. Noelle's knees buckled. Her breath caught in her throat. "Please," she begged, trembling. "I know I was wrong. But I never stopped loving you, not for 1 second. It was a mistake, just a stupid mistake. I've cleaned myself up, I swear, I'll never let another man near me again. Please, just give me a chance to make this right, please don't be so cruel." Graham let out a sharp, bitter laugh. "Cruel," he echoed. His eyes burned with fury now, his entire body shaking with the force of memory. "You left me bleeding on the side of the road, Noelle. You knew I was in that crash, and you walked away. You climbed into another man's bed, again and again, behind my back. Then you left me to die in a burning house." He stepped closer, eyes gleaming with rage. "If that's what love means to you, then God help the next man who ever trusts you." Just then, Graham felt something warm settle across his shoulders. He turned, surprised. It was Avery. She gently tugged the jacket around him, her tone soft and matter-of-fact. "Wind's picking up. Don't catch a cold." Something in him melted. Her care was quiet, but real. He let out a breath he didn't know he was holding, and gave her a grateful smile. Behind them, Noelle watched everything unfold. The warmth in Avery's voice. The way Graham's shoulders relaxed. The smile he gave, so rare, so unguarded. And something sharp twisted deep in her chest. It felt like someone was slicing her heart into ribbons, slow, deliberate, merciless. She had known Graham for over a decade. She had learned every layer of him, the guarded calm, the cool exterior, the hidden walls. She knew, Graham didn't let people in easily. Back then, it took her years to earn his trust. To be invited into that sacred emotional space he rarely opened to anyone. And now, Avery was standing right in that space. Inside the boundary. Accepted. Something inside Noelle snapped. A storm surged through her, grief, rage, humiliation, heartbreak. The memory of kneeling in front of Avery days ago burned like acid in her chest. The humiliation. The betrayal. The loneliness. It all fused together, igniting a fire she couldn't contain. "Tell me the truth," she shouted, her voice cracking. "Did you ever really love me? When my mom cheated, my dad was destroyed, he never recovered, never forgave her, but he never divorced her either. He held on to that pain till the day he died. And you?" Her voice trembled with fury. "It's only been a few days, and you're already playing house with Avery. Don't tell me you two weren't already hooking up behind my back." The words barely landed before Avery stepped forward. And slapped her, hard. "Who the hell do you think you're insulting?" Avery's voice was razor-sharp. "You think everyone's as cheap as you? Don't you dare project your filth onto me." Graham couldn't help it, he laughed. Not kindly. Not even out of amusement. It was the kind of laugh that held nothing but disgust. "You're unbelievable," he said. "This might be the first time I've ever been truly embarrassed that I once loved you." His words cut like ice. "You knew how much your father suffered when your mom cheated. You said it broke your heart to watch him crumble. You told me, over and over, how you hated cheaters, how you'd never be like her." His voice rose now, filled with acid. "And then what did you do, Noelle? You crawled into Luca's bed. Again. And again. And again." She opened her mouth, but he didn't give her the chance. You think I should have just swallowed the pain? That I should have sat in that fire and let your betrayal burn me alive? Why? Because I'm the calm one? He stepped closer now, eyes burning with contempt. You cheated. You lied. You threw me away. And you really think I owe you some kind of emotional martyrdom? That I should die for your mistakes? His voice dropped to a low snarl. Who the hell do you think you are? Noelle staggered. It felt like someone had punched her lungs shut. His eyes, once full of warmth, now looked at her like she was a stranger. A mistake. A stain. And she had no words. Not one. Because deep down, she knew every word was true. Watching Graham's back as he walked away, Noelle collapsed to her knees. She covered her eyes and let out a gut-wrenching scream. A sound so raw, so broken, it barely sounded human. Back at home, Graham drained a full glass of water in one go. Only then did he start to feel steady again. He glanced at the takeout box on the counter and sighed, regretful. The food was actually really good. I brought some back thinking you'd enjoy it while it was still hot, but now it's cold. Before he could say more, Avery had already started unboxing the containers herself. Perfect timing, I'm starving. She grinned. And lucky for you, I happen to love cold food. You're just too good to me, Graham. Honestly, I think I love you even more now. He knew she was joking, trying to lift his mood. And it worked. He chuckled, taking the containers from her hands. All right. Enough flirting. Let me reheat this stuff before you poison yourself with food poisoning and I have to play nurse at the ER. Seeing him smile again, Avery finally let herself breathe. But peace didn't last. Every day after that, Noelle showed up at Graham's front gate. Rain or shine. Waiting. Hoping. Begging with her silence. At first, Graham couldn't help but show his disgust. A wince, a flinch, the tightening of his jaw. But soon, even that disappeared. He started looking at her like she was nobody. A stranger. That weekend, Avery showed up with a brand new camera. Come on, she said, tugging on his arm. Let's go to the park. You can be my model for the day. Graham tried to say no. But, as always, he gave in. They spent the afternoon taking pictures. Avery giving directions, Graham striking awkward poses, both of them laughing more than they expected. As the sun began to set, Avery motioned for one last shot. Graham stepped into the amber light, framed by the horizon. Just as he turned slightly to adjust his posture, a man came charging out of nowhere. Disheveled, wild-eyed, screaming. Graham! Die! He was holding a knife. Graham turned. But all he saw was a twisted face and the flash of a blade heading straight for his chest. His body froze. Mind blank. Limbs locked. And then, black. A figure leapt in front of him. Shielding him with their body, arms thrown around him in one final, protective embrace. He felt the knife stab deep. Felt the breath leave a woman's lungs. Heard the guttural, muffled groan of pain. And everything else disappeared. Screams erupted around them. Call 911. Somebody's hurt. We need an ambulance, now. Noelle's clothes were soaked in red. But her expression didn't register pain. Instead, she looked straight at Graham, her eyes locked on his face, wild with worry. Are you okay? Did he hurt you? Graham could barely think. His brain was frozen, numb. He blinked slowly, then shook his head. Noelle let out a breath she didn't even know she'd been holding. She smiled faintly, then collapsed. Right there, in his arms. Security had already wrestled the attacker to the ground. He was still screaming, thrashing like a man possessed. Noel. Why the hell would you take that knife for him? I gave you everything. You're supposed to love me. Then, suddenly, he turned his rage on Graham. You should have died in that fire. Why are you still here? You don't deserve her. You don't deserve anything. You stole her from me, you sick bastard. The voice. The unhinged, furious voice. Finally cut through the fog in Graham's mind. Luca. Or what was left of him. God knows what he'd been through since the fire. But now he was unrecognizable. Ragged. Broken. Completely deranged. With Luca restrained, people rushed toward Noel. A couple of bystanders dropped to their knees, trying to stop the bleeding with napkins and shirts. Someone had already dialed for help. Graham stood, still dazed. Then, suddenly, he was pulled into a tight embrace. Graham. Are you okay? Are you hurt? It was Avery. Her face was ashen, drenched with sweat. Her hands shook as she ran them over his arms, his chest, his shoulders, desperate to find a wound, to prove he was whole. When she finally realized the blood wasn't his, her knees nearly buckled. She'd seen the whole thing from a distance. Watched the man leap, the knife flash, Noel dive in between them. She was still shaking. I never should have dragged you out today. I'm so sorry. I should have been there. I should have protected you. Graham was finally coming back to himself. This was Avery. The woman who always cracked jokes, who never seemed to take anything seriously. But now her voice was trembling, her eyes wide with fear. He reached up and gently cupped the back of her head. It's okay. I'm okay. Noel, she took the knife for me. Only then did Avery finally notice the bloodied figure on the ground. Her expression twisted, complicated, unreadable. She took a deep breath and stepped back. All right, she said, voice steadying. You don't need to worry. I'll take care of everything. And she did. Within minutes, Avery had called in favors, pulled strings. Arranging for Noel to be transferred to the best private hospital in the region. She made sure the doctors waiting were the best money could buy. Because in the middle of all that chaos, one thing was clear. Noel had saved Graham's life. And even Avery wasn't heartless enough to ignore that. The injuries were severe. After 3 grueling hours in the operating room, Noel was moved into the ICU. The doctors were blunt, her chances of waking up were nearly non-existent. When Mira, Noel's closest friend, heard the news, she rushed in from Brookhaven without hesitation. Graham visited one last time. Noel lay motionless, pale and fragile under the sterile hospital light, her chest rising ever so faintly beneath the machines. Mira stood beside the bed, tears welling in her eyes. She looked at Graham, then said quietly. She gave her life for you. Yes, she made mistakes. But seeing her like this, doesn't it break your heart? But that wasn't the real question. Not really. What Mira was truly asking was, do you still love her? Graham held her gaze. His voice was calm. Steady. I'm grateful for what she did. But that's all. 3 months later, Graham and Avery were in the Arctic Circle, wrapped in thick coats, standing under the shimmering green sky of the northern lights. That's when the message came. Noel was gone. Mira sent a short video. In it, Noel looked like a shadow of herself, sunken cheeks, skin like parchment. She was clutching a worn photo to her chest. In it, a younger Graham smiled at the camera, arms wrapped around a blushing girl. Their first photo together. Her voice, barely audible, came through the screen. Graham. I'm sorry. I love you. With what little strength she had left, she pressed the photo to her heart. Her heartbeat monitor slowed, then went flat. And still, even in death, she never let go of the photo.